I used to believe I could turn it all around. Not because I felt strong, but because I refused to stop moving. Every day felt like spinning a wheel in my head. How can I make this work? What move fixes everything? What if I'm one decision away? Some days, I didn't even have the will to make it. But I kept telling myself I would still be successful. I believe that if I just kept working, kept producing, kept showing up, the ending would take care of itself. I wanted to feel like I had money. I wanted people to believe I still had what it took. And while it looked like I was holding everything together, I was completely alone. I didn't realize it then, but spinning isn't the same thing as moving. Sometimes it's just how you delay the break. This is the Journeyman Podcast. I'm E.C. Rains in the Anchor Production Studios. Welcome back to the Journeyman Podcast. Harkening back, this is a couple decades ago, mind you. At the time, my career was already shifting under my feet. I was working as an independent insurance broker. The company I was with was purchased by a much larger one, United Healthcare. On paper, it looked like growth. In reality, it meant less control, less stability, more uncertainty. Income became unpredictable. Savings started shrinking, and my house was closer to going down than anyone knew. When your structure starts to collapse quietly, your mind doesn't stop. It accelerates. You don't ask how to rest. You ask how to survive. Long nights, not sleeping, feeling like an insomniac, the reality of the day doesn't feel good. Well, what did I do during that time? How did I journey through that? This is E.C. Rains in the Journeyman Podcast. I didn't want people to see fear. I wanted them to see success. I wanted to feel like I still had money. Success, wealth, was a prominent person in the community. I wanted to look like I still had options. So I worked constantly, relentlessly, spinning wheels. From the outside, it probably looked like discipline, like drive, like ambition. Inside, it was pressure and isolation. I kept knowing this was going nowhere. I was convincing everyone else and losing myself in the process. It always felt that I was in some kind of undefined reality. I was not in my current self. It always felt like I was looking ahead or looking behind or looking at the fact that I wasn't sleeping at night. And I didn't know how to get out of it. I didn't want to admit that I couldn't get out of it, because what that means is more of a microscope on myself from other people, possibly doctors and things like that. I had to go through a bunch of working process on myself. Do you realize that, though, at the time? Do you feel like, yeah, I give up. I quit. Should I make that move to change my life around, even though it might be worse than current situation? Think about that. Your life is already spiraling downwards and you're thinking to yourself, I need to stop, pause, take a break. Not take a break, but break from my reality of the person I was, the job I had, and it might get worse. I might become more starving, less sleep, not enjoying the creature, pleasures that I was so used to having, good food, good friends. But I wasn't going to get that more. I was going to get that less. And the pantomime of myself playing out in society with my friends, family, would get harder. I wouldn't know how to act eventually. I think that's how you separate from everyone in your life. You don't ask for help. You don't journey toward a direction that would give you a better chance at a future. I didn't realize that. You don't. Someone needs to grab you by the shirt, shake you a little bit, and say, this is your direction. You're going the wrong way. You're lost. Even though it's productive, making an honest and adequate living, I was still depleting everything. So if I say adequate, I don't know if that's actually the case. But I was convincing everyone else, as I said, and losing myself in the process. Staring at my computer screen one day, hoping someone would come across some magical solution as I stared blankly. You all know the amazing works of online dating, and mind you, this is 3 decades or 2 decades ago. So the things we have now on apps and things like that, I was still using a flip phone. We didn't have these smartphone capabilities. That's when I met her. We started traveling. North Carolina, South Carolina, across the East. Beaches, museums. Of course, that came with gift shops and Tanger outlets. Spending freely without thinking, without slowing down. For a while, the pressure went quiet. Not gone, just muted. As long as someone wanted to be there, everything else felt survivable. A knowing distraction, but as I went through it, I knew the funds were going away. It would eventually destroy me, but I wasn't going to admit that. This is the Journeyman Podcast. I didn't understand it then, but I wasn't building a relationship. I was borrowing stability. I was avoiding grief, avoiding fear, avoiding the truth of how close everything was to breaking. I wasn't asking the relationship to make me happy. I was asking it to keep me functional. If this part of my life was there, that means the other things would fall together. I have something to work towards other than myself, which is a huge mistake. Eventually, The relationship ended kindly, cleanly, without drama. That was the moment I should have broken a long time before. Instead, I kept going. I was borrowing stability, as I said. I was avoiding grief, avoiding fear, avoiding the truth of how close everything was to breaking. I wasn't asking it to make me happy, as I said. It was the email. A long written email about how circumstances was for her, or were for her. The email ended with a salutation. It simply said, "Make your life excellent." I still remember that to this day, decades later. Every time I tackle something or make a decision on what I should be doing or what I should be learning, my future, it still gives me some of the motivation to journey towards those things. What are my goals? What are things that I can do? What are my talents? Am I augmenting those or just sleepwalking through life? I had certain hobbies that I thought would make me happy if I did them. And you know what? They probably would. I wasn't working towards them at that time. I was just thinking that doesn't what real people do. That's something fun for me. It's something that I don't know if I could actually sustain myself with. I did have one Division I coach who said, "You need to change your entire life if you want to sit on a bench." University of North Carolina, Charlotte, was it? And he said, "You need to get your teaching certificate." I said, "That's ridiculous. I work in insurance. I would never be able to afford my house." Little did I know. So that was for lack of a better term, and I use it, it's pipe dream. I'm not going to flash forward to my current life because that's what this podcast is about, the journey. I don't forward to quote unquote the end. That's not a journeyman though. We talked about that in the last podcast. You're always in the middle, not the end, not the beginning. So your question might be, were you struggling with other things? Were you struggling with the insomnia? Were you struggling with the lack of reality? Were you just going to go through what you were going through and let everything fall apart? Answer to most of those, honestly, is yes. I was going to let everything fall apart. I could have been homeless because of my pride, ego, all those things. I really was on the verge of that. It wasn't something that was being thought of. I'm not being dramatic of, holy cow, this guy was close to the edge here, of just absolutely being dissociated from society. This is the Journeyman Podcast. This is the Journeyman Podcast with E.C. Rains. So, I found another job, a smaller insurance company, but it was bigger than the independent brokerage I was at before. On paper, it worked. In reality, the damage had already happened. Success showed up late. As I worked for the company, I asked for more salary than commission. I said, I need to build this department for you. Extremely brokenhearted. It was half-hearted. I didn't know if I could be successful. They gave me 6 months to start building some significant revenue for the new department in their health insurance brokerage firm. It was really important to them. To me, it was just, man, this is going to keep me going for at least a little while longer before I just quit. Not just on the career, the job, but the normal things in life that I was trying to attempt. Keeping my house afloat, keeping things above board. I was relationshipless. My health, I guess, probably was declining. I wasn't a doctor at the time, but I was not eating well. I was what's called house poor. Food wasn't nutritious. It was whatever I could get my hands on. Sleep was not happening. It was a constant zombie-like existence. Make your life excellent. I didn't know how. The line stayed with me for more than 20 years. Not because I knew how, but because I didn't. This is E.C. Rains with the Journeyman Podcast at the Anchor Production Studios.